So Julian Assange is back in the news in a second-hand sort of a way. We have a judge of the Swedish Supreme Court, a Mr. Stefan Lindskog, who has come to tell us that Julian Assange, under normal circumstances, would probably not be extradited from Sweden, because Sweden doesn't extradite people accused of military or political offences. Well, that's nice, but Sweden does extradite people if there's a complementary law in each country, and oddly enough, just last year, Sweden passed a new and very tough law about espionage. So if by any chance it just crosses the mind of those geniuses in the American Justice Department to try and charge Julian Assange with espionage, well, as far as we can see, there's nothing in Swedish law which says he can't be extradited. Except perhaps one thing. Stefan Lindskog is here on a sponsored visit sponsored by the government of Sweden. So we can assume that he's talking with a certain amount of authority from that body. And among other things, he says he does not believe that Assange should be punished. He thinks that the leaking of certain classified information through WikiLeaks was in fact a benefit for mankind. And he says it should never be a crime to reveal a crime of the state. Well, of course, it shouldn't either, but don't tell that to the Americans. They would regard it as a very hefty crime to reveal their crimes of state. And this, of course, is where the catch is. There may be no legal way of extraditing Julian Assange from Sweden, or there may be. We don't know, that's up to the judges. But what's the law anyway? The Americans have never worried too much about it in the past when they can get their hands on victims. And there's been at least one case in the past of terrorist suspects, in inverted commas, being kidnapped from Sweden, extradited illegally by the Americans for what they laughingly call rendition. In other words, detention and torture in a secret prison. So I wouldn't be too confident if I were Julian Assange, as he comes up to his 10th month holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy. It might be getting a bit boring in there, but at least it's pretty safe. We can guarantee that the Americans aren't going to try and kidnap him out of the embassy. But once he comes out, well, after that, he may well become fair game. Justice Lindskog says it's all a bit of a mess. The charges against Assange are messy in Sweden. The situation's confused and silly. It would be nice to bring it all to an end. Well, sure it would. We all think that. And I'm sure Julian Assange does too. But I'm sure when he says he'd like to bring it to an end, he is not thinking of summary execution. Perhaps the Americans are. I'm Mungo McCallum.